Well, this is going to be my last video before I head off to Australia and New Zealand, and today I am going to answer the burning question you've all had and have been waiting for me to answer, and that is, what does a bushel look like, and can you show me that? So when you talk about a bushel of corn is a volume of corn. And the complicated thing about all this is actually when I sell corn to an end user, whether it's a corn sweetener plant, an ethanol plant, a feed mill, I sell by weight. What leaves my farm, I always say, oh, I'm gonna sell 10,000 bushels of corn. Well, really I'm selling the weight of what 10,000 bushels of corn would be. And there's a whole argument on different web pages, one specifically, which is New Ag Talk. And it is a complete rabbit hole when you describe what a bushel, or you talk about test weight, or all this kind of stuff. Today, I'm gonna keep it really, really simple. A bushel of corn weighs 56 pounds. So yes, as a Canadian that uses the metric system, I just said 56 pounds. So what does that mean in kilograms? Let me look. That is 25.4 kilograms of corn. So 56 pounds of corn is 25.4 kgs. We talk about metric tons in corn. Some people might talk tons in the US. So a ton, if you're using a long ton, is 2,205 pounds is equal to 1 metric ton. 1 metric ton is 1,000 kgs. So as you can see, sometimes the math in farming gets a little complicated because we're doing a whole bunch of different conversions. And as Canadians, you would think, hey, they're on the metric system. But you know what? We talk pounds per bushel, we talk kgs, we talk metric tons, we talk liters per acre. So it gets pretty complicated. As I said, a bushel of corn is 56 pounds or 25.4 kgs. So what does that look like? The only corn I can really get access to quick and measure out what 56 pounds looks like is in the sheep barn. So let's go over and grab 2 pails of corn and I'll show you what 56 pounds looks like.
You have a lot of faith in my strength.
Ready?
Yeah, kind of. Arm day.
Pipes.
Leg arms.
Look at those. Leg arms. Leg arms.
I know, he's crying.
Be jealous. Be jealous.
He's so scared.
Okay, now that we got some corn from the sheep barn, I have a fancy little, oh, you silly camera. I'm gonna use this to measure the weight. So right now, and I'll show you briefly, hold on, I have a bushel of corn, 56 pounds or 25.4 kgs. So let's take a look. I'm gonna cover your eyes. It's a big surprise. This is what a bushel of corn looks like. Ta-da! What we have here is 56 pounds of corn. I've used 2 Home Depot 5-gallon pails or roughly 20-liter pails to measure out what 56 pounds look like. Each pail has 28 pounds. So that's what a bushel of corn looks like. So when we talk about yield in corn, we always, in my area, talk about bushels per acre, which is the American way of doing it. People in Eastern Ontario would tend to say metric ton per acre. I don't know many people that use hectares in farming in Canada. Maybe in Quebec, probably. They tend to be more towards the metric system than we are. But yeah, here is a bushel of corn. So when we talk about getting 200 bushel to the acre yield on corn, we would have the equivalent of 400 of these Home Depot pails per acre of corn. And that would be a good yield. That would tend to be our like 5 to 10 year average on our farm because we've been pretty fortunate with weather and things. And I think in an attempt to make this video fun and educational, I was going to go through my production numbers and actually show you how much of that corn I have left over after I pay a whole bunch of input costs. So this is the fun part where I'm going to weigh out the equivalent of what each of these inputs cost out of these 2 pails of corn, and I'm going to show you what's left. To do that, I did some fancy math on my computer. I built an Excel spreadsheet, did some automatic calculations and a whole bunch of different things. And this is what I have. What I did was took our kind of average costs for seed, chemical, fertilizer, land rent, crop insurance, drying, and equipment costs. And what I did was took what it cost per acre to do that and kind of attributed back to what that would be in pounds of corn. So we have, 56 pounds is a bushel, and I'm just going to show you out of all those costs, how much of that 56 pounds is used up to pay for these different inputs. So to do that, I need my computer, and I'm going to grab that and we can start going through the process so you can see what it looks like. So one of our most expensive inputs for growing corn is fertilizer. We use fertilizer to help the plant start growing in the spring, and then we have to use a little bit more in season in the form of nitrogen to keep it growing. That takes up 16% of the corn that we have in these pails. So 16% of 56 is 8.73 pounds. So I'm going to take out 8.73 pounds. I'm going to put it in another pail and we'll keep going through the process. So that is 8.73 pounds of corn in this pail. And if you were to look at these two, you don't think we've lost much, but that one here is a little lower. So that is just for fertilizer. When we look at seed costs, seed would be our second most direct input, I would call, when you look at seed, chem, and fertilizer. So fertilizer number one, seeds number two. For seed, it takes up 10% of that 56 pounds. So we have to take 5.65 pounds of corn out of the pail, and that's for seed. Okay, so we got fertilizer, we got seed covered. Now it's time to look at chemicals. So the pesticides we use to control weeds or diseases within the cornfield, on a per bushel basis, it takes up 6% of that 56 pounds. So now we have to take 3.15 pounds of corn out to make up for chemicals. So I'm gonna dump it, and then we're gonna go on to crop insurance. And crop insurance isn't a whole lot. It's like really small. It only is like a half a pound of corn, but we'll take a half a pound of corn out. Okay, so that's crop insurance. It's only, as I said, like half a pound of corn. It's not a big expense, but it's really, really important for us because what crop insurance does is that we can buy insurance, like fire insurance for a house, pay for the premium, but you hope you never have to use it. And what that does is we pay a per acre basis to insure our crop against weather events. And really what that does, we're insuring yield. And if the weather affects our yield, then we do get a payment from the crop insurance. We don't really count on it. We don't like getting it because it means that we had a bad year. We're willing to pay a little bit of money to have crop insurance. So the next one I'm going to do is kind of sensitive because there's so many ways to do this, and it's equipment. Equipment is so different on every farm. Some people lease equipment, some people buy equipment, some people pay to have the work done, and we call that custom work. We own our equipment, so we use our own stuff, but I think in fairness to try to figure out this, and as I said, I didn't get into numbers because everyone would lose their marbles, and there would probably be so much hate mail from everybody because I did numbers that they wouldn't agree with. That's why I'm doing weight and kind of a visual representation of what's left in a bushel of corn to pay some other bills. So equipment, for us, equipment makes up about 10% of that bushel. So we're gonna have to take out basically 5.6 pounds of corn. We're gonna take that out of the pail and we'll see what we got left in the two pails. Okay, so we have a lot of these inputs covered, and there's still lots to talk about, and this is very simple math, and just a really quick way to visualize kind of what it costs to grow corn. So a couple things we haven't dealt with yet. One is drying. So we have to dry the corn so we can store it. Usually we harvest it at 27% moisture. Hopefully it's lower than that, like 23. We always have to dry our corn here in Ontario, especially where we live, and that can range every year from being fairly expensive if it's really wet corn or not too bad if it's drier. This past year of 2019, it was a train wreck. So we had to dry 30+% corn. That cost us on our farm 8% of that bushel. So we have to take 4¼ pounds out of the pail to account for what it cost us to dry. If I was going to a mill or an elevator where I would actually have to pay someone to dry it for me, it would be 2 to 3 times that amount. We save a lot by drying on the farm. What we save helps pay for our infrastructure costs when we build a new dryer, or we put a grain pit in, or we put a leg in to move grain around. That's the reason why we build these things, is because the money we save helps us pay for the capital cost. That's why we do improvements on our farm. So we have to account for drying. I'm gonna take 4.27 pounds out, and that's gonna pretty much take care of that pail. So to this point now, we have fertilizer, seed, chemical, equipment, crop insurance, and drying looked after. And half my corn is gone to pay for all those inputs. And that's the reality of farming, is that we can't grow a crop without incurring some costs to grow it. There is one expense that's left, and I'm gonna set down this pail and talk about it because it's probably the most sensitive cost we have. So you wonder what that cost might be? Well, what else do you need to grow a crop besides seed, chemical, fertilizer, and equipment? You need land. You need somewhere to grow the crop. You need a field to grow it in. And that brings us to land cost. And this is really hard to show a representation for. So what I've done is just kind of take our land base and just put an average cash rent value against it. So cash rent can range all over the place, depending where you are. Land values range all over the place, depending on where you are. So it's hard. It's hard to put a number on this, and I might be a little soft on the land rent value, but really when we calculate it out, it is 25% of that bushel of corn. So when you look at those 2 pails of corn that I have out, a quarter of that corn, or half of 1 pail, just goes to land. And that's probably on the low side, but I tend to be a little conservative. Let me weigh out the land part of this, and we'll show you what I have left in corn after we kind of have it grown. Okay, so I did it. This is what we got left. I'm gonna show you. 1 pail is empty, another pail is half full. This garbage pail here is all my expenses. So this is what comes out of a bushel of corn to grow a bushel of corn. And this pail here, it's a half full Home Depot pail, which is roughly 12 pounds of corn is left over for me to pay some of the other costs I have on the farm that I haven't factored into what it costs to grow that. As I said, my attempt here was to visually show you just I call it kind of cost of goods sold, which is my cost to grow the crop so I actually have something to sell. What's not factored in all those pails is hydro for the farm, property taxes, truck payments, wages, trucking, building repairs, all those kind of things aren't included in those pails. So, am I trying to paint a bleak picture? No. Here in Canada, we have been okay. And let me put a caveat on that, because some people would argue that we haven't been okay. We haven't felt the drop in prices quite as bad as our American counterparts, because we are priced off the Chicago Board of Trade. So what happens there is Chicago has a price, and then we have a local price that accounts for demand for corn and also an exchange rate to put it in Canadian dollars. So far, because our dollar has been weaker than the American dollar, our price per corn has been higher. And that's the only thing that's been saving us is that yields have been good, so we have lots of product to sell. And that 2, our prices are a little bit better because of the exchange rate, because our dollar is weaker than the American. In conclusion, we have to be very careful as farmers how we spend our money, because once we are done growing the crop, there's not much left of it for us to use to buy other things. So we have to be pretty financially frugal about our spending, especially when things are a little tighter and margins are tight. I hope you found this video informative. If you're interested in see what that looks like in my other crops like soybeans and wheat, I'd be happy to do it. It won't be for 2 months because I'm going to be gone, but that's corn. So basically, out of 56 pounds of corn, I have a quarter of it left over to do fun stuff and pay bills and keep my banker happy. So now this is my last video before I take off to Australia and New Zealand. I am so excited about going. I am sad because I am going to miss Sandy a lot. We haven't been apart ever this long, so it's going to be really weird not seeing her for like 2 months. I'm dreading that, but I'm looking forward to seeing all the people that I haven't seen in a while and to meet a whole bunch of new Australian, New Zealand farmers. My goal is I got all my gear packed up. I'm going to put the camera away after doing this video. I got the stuff to do podcasts and I got the video stuff. I got my drone. And my hope is to do 2 videos a week and upload them to the channel. I'm not sure on the schedule. I'm going to be dealing with time changes and different days. But that's my hope, is to have kind of 2 videos a week pop up on the channel. So keep an eye out for them. They're going to be pretty raw and just not a lot of editing. And my hope is once I get home and over the spring and maybe early summer months after the cropping slows down a little bit, I'm going to do some compilation videos that are a little tidier, stitch them all together and have maybe a little bit nicer videos that I can show you, but just to kind of keep you in the loop of what's going on in my life. So with that, thanks for watching. The next time you're going to see me, it's going to be from Australia. I'm excited about that. I hope you are too, so see you then.